This is Channel World Seed. I'm John Paul Judson, live and direct from Istanbul at the World Seed Congress. And in this session, we will be discussing the seeds of sustainability and responsibility for resilient agriculture and food systems, and the environmental and social role of the seed sector in that. Now, we often think of companies as organizations that make and sell things. But companies are also social beings. They play a role in a community. They play a role in a value chain. They play a role also in relation to their employees. And in the context of seed, there is a very direct link between the seed companies and the farmers in many different communities. And this is what we're going to be discussing this morning, how seed companies are interacting as a social organization in this economic context. Joining me this morning to discuss this, CEO of the Australian Seed Federation, Catherine Delbridge, the Global Head of Communications, Public and Regulatory Affairs and Sustainability at East West Seed, Maaike Groot, and the founder of Praketi Agrologics, Sheikh Imran. Welcome to the three of you. So before we discuss the actual social role of a seed company, can we maybe just address the actual social role of the seed itself? And do you think seeds plays a social role beyond simply being an agricultural input for farmers? Catherine?
Absolutely. I think it's clear that a seed goes much further than a paddock or a greenhouse. If you think about where so much of our agricultural industries around the world are positioned, it's a lot of the time in rural communities that are built on the back of agriculture. Therefore, seed is the starting point for that.
Yeah. Maaike?
Yes, seeds to me are tiny caskets of hope. They carry so much potential to lift farmers from poverty. We work on bringing quality seeds to smaller farmers to try and elevate them from poverty to increase their income. And together with quality seeds and also training and sustainable vegetable cultivation, we really see them having the potential to grow, to support their family and increase their livelihood. So yes, seeds are potential and hope.
Please. Yeah.
I think for farmers especially, seed is a form of hope, right? It is something as simple as feeding their family or building food security of entire nations. So a seed represents everything. So if I can give you a small example, in the 17th century in India, the first coffee bean was brought in from Yemen. And now that whole region is a coffee producing hub, and we are the 7th largest coffee producer of the world. And it all started with just one bean. So seeds are tools of social transformation, and they will always continue to be and give that hope to farmers.
So you talk about this notion of hope, and there are communities that it's not just a question of hope. I mean, they actually directly depend on seed to survive, and we hope thrive, but at least survive in a first step. What do you think is the role of a seed company in supporting those communities beyond simply just providing seed, Maaike?
It's important. We work with over 15,000 smallholder farmers producing our seeds in India, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, Myanmar even. And it's important for us to see them indeed not only as producers, but also to support them, to help them with training, with inputs to grow those seeds. Also because we want not only them to be able to build their income on that, it's much more than agriculture, it's their livelihood and the way how they support their families. But also we see them as very skilled people. We need them as loyal partners to work with for the long-term future, both of their families but also for our company. So it goes way beyond just a business transaction.
And in Australia, Catherine, what would you say are the biggest, let's say, social challenges that you're facing? What are the kind of working conditions of people working around seed in Australia? And what kind of measures do you put in place to address that?
I have to say that Australia does benefit from having very strong labour laws, but it's not a country that's without challenges. We certainly experience challenges with seasonal workforces and then also for workers who live in very remote regional communities. I think Australia is a very big country, but we don't have a huge population, so there are huge parts of our land that are still productive, but there's not always great services available to people who are living and working there. Obviously then within the Asia Pacific region, we have a few more challenges regarding things like informal labour. If I can give sort of two specific examples of a couple of things that we've done at the Australian Seed Federation to assist our members with workforce, but also in respect of our own social responsibility. The first is around creative ways of thinking about communications campaigns to bring more people into our industry. Particularly, we rely heavily on what we call backpackers, or that seasonal workforce of people who are travelling around and they be coming in for short terms of seasonal work. And we need to make sure that they understand how workers' rights are in Australia under our actual labour laws, but also that the companies that they work with give very clear expectations of what's on offer and what sort of work they're expected to do. The second one, and something that's very close to my heart, in that before I joined the world of seeds and agriculture, I was a disability and mental health advocate, and so that's still something that I carry with me. It's, you know, you don't lose those sorts of things that you're passionate about. And we're working with an organisation called Ability Agriculture to try and connect our companies and other people working in agriculture to workforces who desperately want to work but have perhaps been overlooked in traditional industries in the past. And I think that, yeah, I take that with me as a very strong, everybody has something to offer. Sometimes it's just about how we shape the roles that we have in our industries.
Okay, and maybe to come back to this notion of community. So Micah talked about, you know, let's say training and providing tools around seed production for farmers and growers in certain regions. Imran, I mean, do you expect that from seed companies, that they do a lot more than just provide seeds to farmers and growers? And what would be your kind of recommendations to the seed sector there?
I think empowering farming communities, especially with seeds, and also biodiversity, it's not just a social issue, but it impacts business for seed companies. So it is important that these companies go hand in hand with the empowerment and social services that they provide. But it's also important that we redefine what empowerment actually means. It's not a company providing something monetary, something material to a farmer, but it is all about co-creation. How we can get closer to the farmers, how we can talk to them, and how we can make a participatory approach so that farmers are not just involved now, but the next generation is also involved in this whole story of seed and the hope that we are talking about. So it's important to empower so that this hope is alive, right? And we also live in a time where we face unheard of crises like climate change, desertification, biodiversity loss. All these three things happen at the same time on the same farmer, and it impacts them severely. And it is these seed companies that probably have the highest chance of saving them or protecting our land and conserving these species and ensuring that there is food security, livelihood, and also the whole system continues as usual. So it is important that we talk about empowering communities on the ground.
But isn't the argument usually made on the seed sector side that this empowerment is actually done by breeding new and improved varieties? I mean, wouldn't that be like the typical argument that this is our social role? How much awareness is there really of the importance of doing that, those extra efforts of empowering communities beyond simply bringing new varieties to market? Maybe Catherine as a quick reaction.
Yeah, I think we have to see our industry as we provide more than genetics and yield. We have to provide that social responsibility. That's my quick thoughts on that.
Okay. Micah?
Absolutely, it's not about seeds, it's about giving farmers also the added value of those seeds, so making sure that they know how to use the seeds and get the highest potential out of those seeds. So that's where the training comes in, the awareness, the sharing materials on that, so yes.
In the regions that you're operating in with East West Seed, what would be the kind of most vulnerable groups that you think you would encounter in this whole process of, you know, breeding, seed production, getting seeds to farmers, and how do you address certain groups that have specific difficulties?
Well, if I would zoom in on India, for example, where we do part of our seed production, we see that especially women smallholder farmers are not in an easy position, so to say. Men in India have always dominated agriculture, women taking a supportive role, but without having the access to the finance or the decision making. So our seed production team in India has started to involve women as our contract people. So we have contracted more and more women over the past year. So now 20% of our seed growers are women. And I guess we all know that when money goes to the women, it's usually better spent, or at least spent on the family. And also we have, we try to bring in more women from another background into seed growing. We've defined women who were, for example, growing maize or soybean, and we have onboarded them, we trained them, we gave them inputs like mulch or net cages, and we gave them very intensive one-on-one training so they could also start learning how to grow seeds as seed producers. And it's a small program, but gradually we're working on that, so we train 10 new seed growers, female seed growers every year, so now we have 35 female seed growers who came from a different background. And in total, we now have 800 women seed producers. So slowly, we're trying to make a difference there.
Okay, now the other question when we're discussing, the social aspects is that companies will also have their own, let's say, corporate policies on how to implement, social rights, and there is also a big diversity of labor laws and legislation around this around the world. So, how much do you see it possible or even desirable that companies collaborate more on these kinds of issues of social rights, or do you think it's more a sort of company by company policy, Catherine?
There is a role for both, is probably what I would say, that the companies have the direct responsibility for the people that they are employing throughout their seed supply chains. But wherever there is an opportunity for doing something for the social good, I think that pre-competitive collaboration works, and that's where groups like the International Seed Federation, Environmental and Social Responsibility Group come into the picture, because that's an opportunity for a whole lot of private seed companies, but also with representatives from national seed associations to come together to set guidelines or directions for what we want as an industry, as opposed to something that's specific for a company. So wherever there's something for the social good and something that people can agree on, I think that's where the work of the national seed associations is key, because we don't need to get into the business of each individual company, but we have the opportunity to talk more broadly as an advocate for the whole industry, and we can really support these sorts of initiatives. So I think it's a dual approach.
Mike, at East West Seed, I mean, you have a very strong involvement in this kind of area. What kind of expectation do you have then on association level, on collaborating with other companies in this field? I mean, do you see it as a distinct corporate policy, or do you see room for collaboration with other companies in this area?
Oh, very much. I mean, that's what we're doing here. We're trying to collaborate, we're trying to find common grounds and to support each other. And I think ISF, but also the regional associations and the national seed associations play a very big role, especially in terms of social and environmental compliance. There's a lot of things coming our way, the CSRD reporting, CS-DDD reporting, and we have to be compliant. But more than that, we want to take responsibility. But it's helpful if we all have to do it together, because we create a level playing field, and it's not one of us trying to do good and losing that competitive edge. But also we see that many of these global guidelines are not so seed sector specific. So ISF can play a really strong role here, and it's good to sit together, to talk, to get guidelines, some best practices to share them, having even checklists on how to go about. So I think seed associations and especially ISF play a very big role here.
So there is obviously this sort of regulatory aspect to it, but then there are also some very practical examples of how seed companies can make a difference. Could you maybe just actually reflect on a couple of them? I mean, you work in this field very much, so it would be interesting to actually hear some real life examples.
Yeah, I think I've spent the last 4 years traveling to many remote locations in southern India, and I have to admit that seed companies have amazing outreach. They're everywhere. So I think after the farmers who have the first-hand experience being on the front line of many of these climate risks or changing environmental conditions, it is the seed companies who get the data immediately after the farmers. So I think this has helped to create a certain responsibility in the companies, that they now also provide extension services. They help farmers realize the potential of their land, what they can do, what are new inputs they can be used, or what technologies can be added. And overall, they've been supporting farmers in locations where sometimes the government also fails to reach. So this is what the seed companies have been successful in my observation. And in fact, I believe the next generation of farmers, especially women and young people, they need tailored solutions. They need advisory. They need agronomical advisory. They need ICT tools. Maybe there's some AI applications also coming in, post-harvest data. They need support with all of these parameters. And I've seen farms, smallholder farmers, in the last 10 years go from monoculture to implementing agroforestry to now using that additional income to also reinvest in community centers or setting up a biogas plant or some add-on technologies, which again further boosts their income and their livelihood and supports the overall community. And this has been possible partly because of the outreach of the industries and the private sector that's working on the ground, and also collaboratively with extension services, and also farm leaders who show up, collaborate with these companies, are contact points in many of the occasions to get the support to the farmers, especially smallholder farmers. So this is what is happening on the ground and something I've observed.
Thanks. Micah, you talked about reporting and compliance, and this is also a development through legislation that companies all the way down the value chain are having to report on, their corporate social responsibility, and so they're asking for data and reports from all their partners all the way upstream, right? And I guess then all the way up to the seed industry as well. Do you see this extra scrutiny as being, more of a challenge moving forwards because it forces you to get more data, get more knowledge, get more understanding of, and also maybe rethink some of the practices within the seed company? Is that like a strong pressure on this debate, Micah?
Well, it's definitely not an easy thing to do. So it's not that we are sort of happy to go through all these audits to get all the information together, because it's a big administrative burden. On the other hand, we're happy that it happens because we want to be a socially and environmentally responsible company, and we feel that the sector has a big role to play. And so in that sense, it works. And it's also coming from colleagues, it's from teams who are asking, are we really, I mean, it's our mission. We want to support farmers and grow their livelihood, but are we really sure? And this is also pushing us and giving us the room basically to start gathering the numbers and basically setting the baseline and see where we want to improve. So even though we moan a little, I'm happy that this movement is now taking place, yes.
And do you see, let's say, specific areas where the seed sector could improve? I mean, is the data showing, let's say, hotspots where improvement would be possible? Catherine or Micah?
Definitely, as I mentioned, the ISF group that I'm part of, we have definitely identified a couple of regions that are key for companies and their national associations and regional associations. But actually, we don't want to focus specifically on a couple of areas. From our point of view, we want to set something that is more higher level, aspirational in tone. We think it's important that there are guidelines that are set that any company from any size of an organization, from any geographical region, could pick up and think this is applicable to me. I think that that's the role of ISF as well, is bringing things together as opposed to focusing on differences. And we want to think of these guidelines as directions for travel as opposed to the road rules, because there are national labour laws obviously that exist all around the globe, and we're not pretending as national seed associations to be IR experts or anything on that legal manner. We are here to say, and Micah used the term earlier, best practice, clear, realistic expectations that we can all work to. Did you want to add?
I think that sums it up really nicely, and again, ISF offers a really nice platform to talk about this and to learn from each other. Yes.
The working conditions could be something that companies could collaborate on very practically in certain regions that share a common, let's say, legislation or regulation. I would imagine you could get companies to say, we agree on a certain number of principles with, minimum requirements, let's say. You can always go further, but let's agree on a set of minimum requirements. Surely that would be possible on a at least local or regional level, and maybe even desirable, right? That's also something an association could maybe push for.
Yeah, correct. I think that's a really good point. That principles term of what we can all work to is a really great goal, and something that I think is definitely achievable. So it's about making sure that we've got all of the right people at the table between the companies and the associations to get to that point. Because that, often I do reflect on, what are you as a national seed association, and there's the very direct roles of governance and maybe networking events that you're putting on. But, I think actually we are there to make sure that the status quo isn't good enough in any of our countries, that we're actually there to set a direction that says, let's go this way, as opposed to just existing as what we've done. I mean, that's what the seed industry has been so good at doing over decades, over centuries of improving our seeds from a genetics and yield point of view, and now we're at a point where we get to think about how do we get to improve the rest of the industry from that social point of view. It's an exciting opportunity.
In your region, there may not be such a structured association of seed companies, so I imagine the initiatives that you see will be taken by individual companies.
Yeah.
But would you see a value also in your context that seed companies would maybe work closer together and agree on a set of common principles potentially? Or do you rather see a value that, no, we need to be agile, flexible, adapt, each company can do a great job by itself?
I think that's something that we all reflected on, and we all agree in the last 3 days that we all lack is a sense of collaboration and a sense of communication. So I think agreeing upon those two things, if we can talk to each other, and not just the companies, but with farmers on the ground, and like I mentioned earlier, go to the co-creation of it and treat these farmers as knowledge partners, not just consumers. That's when we go to a pathway that leads to stronger communities, better seeds, and I think it solves a lot of the issues that we're being trying to tackle, like let's say illegal seeds or these best practices not effectively being extended to the farmers themselves, right? So with this sense of community, and valuing the community members, and also making sure the dialogue is intergenerational, right? So this way I think we can ensure more participation by themselves, people coming into the sector and talking, and the other way around as well.
Okay, so you mentioned the term intergenerational, and I would like to sort of finish this conversation on a reflection, because we're talking here about a much broader responsibility than just improving new varieties and bringing new varieties to market. And on the other hand, we have a sector that needs to constantly be appealing, right, to the new generation that is increasingly urban and increasingly used to interact with food in supermarkets, or even having food delivered directly at home, right? So how much do you think this social responsibility part of the seed companies can be also a way to attract the new generation to feel that, yeah, this is an important sector that I want to be a part of, that I want to foster the development of? Do you think that's an important part of the future, to attract human resources to the sector?
Yeah, I think the seed sector is already attractive, because many of these companies might already know that there are young people already working in this sector as breeders, scientists, biotechnologists, extension workers, and so much more, right? But again, because we lack this dialogue, we are bad storytellers. So we don't communicate what's happening on the ground to the urban areas and back to maybe the farmers and the companies. So we're all working in silos, right? And we just happen to run at each other, maybe at a conference, and we exchange ideas. So maybe this dialogue needs to, be focused on communities, on stories, and science, the work that's happening, the companies that are working around it. So young people are ready to work in this sector, but I think if they see seed companies making an effort to create stronger communities, provide that value, and also value the communities on the ground and the knowledge that these communities are producing, then they will join the seed sector not just as workers, but as change makers and innovators. So we might see a lot more entrepreneurs in the seed sector. You might have competition as well, with more young people coming in and starting seed companies with good storytelling and community building activities. So But another important thing about this dialogue that I've been talking about is we need to ensure that it goes from the soil to the summit, where we're talking about, and back to the soil as well. So it's important that we are grounded, we talk to farmers, and young people are going to do what it takes for sure, because they have been participating in this for years. So it is a very next step. It's just we need to be better storytellers.
Okay, thank you very much. Micah, your point of view on that.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense if we position the seed sector as a responsible sector that takes responsibility for environmental, for social issues. We define ourselves as a very interesting sector to work in. When I joined our company, our family business, I was really amazed to meet also a lot of the old-timers, the veterans in the company, who were basically working there because they often came from poor farming families themselves. And they knew that basically working in seeds and bringing quality seeds to smallholder farmers was really a way to elevate farmers from poverty. So that's basically the reason why they were in that job and why they got out of bed every morning to do that job. And I think that is also a story that works with the next generation. And if I look around on this Congress and I see the NGIN ambassadors who are all very passionate and purpose-driven people, I think that is the way to bring talents in. And after all, we want to bring the people in that want to make a difference. So positioning ourselves as a responsible sector, and not only positioning but really being it, I think will attract the new talent that we need so badly.
Thank you. Yeah, Catherine.
I don't know that I've got too much to add to that. That was excellent. But to reflect on it, I think it's that what youth brings is energy and ideas, and I love the idea of increased competition because that actually just improves what everybody's got to offer. But then also not discounting the wisdom of people who have spent their careers in the seed industry and have learnt so much. And so being able to take all of those levels together, I think, is that classic parable of if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And that's what we get to do as an industry.
And maybe just like a final one, as I think of it, the appeal, right? So the appeal of the sector, I would say if you were to ask some of the people in the Congress, they might have a tendency to say, no, but it's the technology, it's the innovation that the sector brings that is the appeal, right? So you want to get people who can drive the technology, and in the answers that you're giving, it's something quite different, right? It's more like the social responsibility that could be the biggest appeal.
Yeah.
Do you agree? Bigger appeal on the social side than on the tech side? Yes or no?
I think the change is the bigger appeal.
Okay.
It's a diversity again. There's the high-techy jobs in the labs, but we need many people with boots on the ground. So everything, we can offer it all.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with people, so absolutely. People is the way forward.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much for having shared your views, Micah, Catherine, Sheikh. It was brilliant to hear you. Thank you so much. Thank you for attending online. Thank you for attending here. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Stop!